Blog Talk Radio.
Hey, everybody listening to the Independent Corner. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody, and tonight I have two very special guests, Scott and David Hillenbrand. How you guys doing?
We're doing great, Jonathan. Thanks so much for having us on the show.
Hey, Jonathan. Happy to be here.
All right, awesome. These two filmmakers have made a ton of independent films, but two horror films and I guess 3 comedies and 1 action adventure movie. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about how did you guys get into filmmaking?
Good question, Jonathan. We actually been making movies, doing theater ever since we were little kids, and then went to school, trained for it, and then came out to California. We're actually originally from New York. And then we worked for a bunch of other companies for a while, getting a sense of who was doing what and how they were doing it. And then we launched our own company. We made our first movie actually on 45 credit cards. That was a film called Hostile Takeover, like a corporate thriller.
We went and charged out 45 cards. You know, we've heard the story before, but the way we did it was a little interesting. We actually took 5 cards per bank and went and just cash advanced them, got $250,000 together, put it in a production account, and went off to make our first movie.
Awesome. Now, would you consider that mainly maybe like a student film, or was that like a real I guess how much was the budget for that movie?
It was $240,000, and it was a full-on 35-millimeter commercial film that was sold all over the world. Was actually one of the top picks of video business of that year. I think it was 96 or 97. We got a lot of coverage on it, a lot of press. People were impressed with what we were able to pull off on such a shoestring budget.
They actually wrote a nice story about it and us in that year's American Cinematographer. I think it was 1996 for that article, which we were honored, again, on our first feature to write up how we pulled it off and what we did for the cinematography. And, we did some film festivals at the start of it, which got our feet wet in the film festival world.
Yeah, we did the Napa Valley Film Festival and won the audience award there, and then we were an official selection, I think, at the Fort Lauderdale Film Festival, and I think we won an award there. And
then it was sold all around the world, international distribution as well as U.S.
Awesome. Now, would you say that, basically, that film was your film school in a way? Was the way that you guys learned how to go out and really go out and make a movie?
Well, yes and no. I mean, like David said, this is Scott speaking. I went to high school performing arts in New York and then went on to Northwestern. So certainly, there was film school there and acting and directing and all of that involved in all those programmings. And, David went to Indiana University and then to USC Graduate School for Film Composition. So we certainly have a background in the classics and an understanding of drama. But to answer your question, yes, that was the first film that we just said, hey, you know what, this is the one that we're going to direct, and we're going to pull together the crew and do it. We had worked on other people's films in various capacities, but that was the first one where we said, okay, and we hired a team of people and, really good team of people, and that's how it went.
So even if you have had training, I think, your question too, Jonathan, certainly when you're actually making a movie, there's and your first one, there is certainly a big learning curve or, experience where nothing like really doing it from start to finish, from raising the money, or in this case, charging the credit cards, all the way from pre-production, production, and post-production through distribution and selling off the film is certainly a huge learning experience.
Awesome. So after A Hostile Takeover, you guys ended up making King Cobra, which was your second feature film. Now, what was it like going from like an action-adventure movie to like a horror movie?
Well, we had always, when we decided that how we were going to build our company, we looked at other companies like New Line Cinema and how those guys built that company from the beginning. And so we decided, from a business perspective that, making some horror films would be good. And there's always the challenge in a horror film to see if you can, what we call, make the audience jump. We call it jump scares. So, after we finished Hostile Takeover, it was kind of a funny story. Dave and I were rollerblading around Balboa Park out here in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, and we were going through all the universal fears that people just innately have. So we landed on, snakes. And it was funny because we talked to a number of people about making a snake movie, and everyone said we were out of our mind. No one's going to, that's just not going to work. And we said, well, we disagree, and we actually did a lot of research on African king cobras and eastern diamondback rattlesnakes. And, most people don't realize that more people die from snake bites across the world than from shark bites or shark attacks, and that snakes are actually, poisonous snakes, especially in certain parts of the world, are, one of the most dangerous animals that kill the most amount of people. So we did a lot of research and came up with the concept of gene splicing, and what if you took two of the deadliest, forms of, poisonous snakes, rattlesnakes, one for the speed at which they attack and they strike, and African king cobras for the lethalness of the venom. And we always thought it was cool, too, that, with the African king cobras, they rise up and they basically face you. And, people don't also realize that there are parts of the world where mankind hasn't really touched and, or invaded, and there have been accounts of snakes that have grown 30, 40, 50, 60 feet, and, and that could happen. It's all based on how much food is available to them. So we embarked on making this movie, and, we had put the financing together to do it, and then all of a sudden some of the financing fell out, so we had to re-put it back together. And in the middle of doing that, all of a sudden there was Anaconda being made.
You see there, if you look back now, there's been so many snake movies. At the time when we came up with it, there wasn't any that we knew of. And so when people, again, like Scott said, you're making a movie about a giant snake, it was actually kind of ahead of its time. And then when Anaconda cropped up in the middle of our process, we actually thought long and hard at the time, do we continue the project? Do we move forward? And, we did, obviously, completed the film. And it's funny because to this day we've heard people have sent us copies from, even around the world. King Cobra wound up being packaged as Anaconda 2 in the foreign market, even though it has nothing to do with Anaconda. And after King Cobra and Anaconda, this suddenly became a glut of snake movies. Boa and Python, Boa vs. Python is very funny. In fact, we met a couple of people
who actually wound up directing those particular movies.
Yeah, one guy in particular we met at a film market and said he was literally sat down, handed a copy of King Cobra, and told, we want you to make us this movie, because it was very successful financially. It did very well for Lionsgate.
It was actually one of those. Here's a little background story that most people don't know about. King Cobra was the only film besides one other in the year that it was bought by a studio that got $1 million advance up front. And the other film was the Blair Witch Project. In fact, we were honored to be at Sundance and be featured in the filmmaker Sundance edition of the magazine, with the Kodak magazine, with the special feature on King Cobra. And we were actually riding in the van being picked up from the airport with the guys who made Blair Witch and some of the actors, from that movie. And it was that year that Blair Witch got picked up and then went out, to become the phenomenon that it did. And they had gotten $1 million advance as well. So we had that kind of in common, and just a little background story on how the business of it went down.
Nice. So I do have to ask this, though. This was, a burning question I've had since I knew I was going to have you guys on the show. How was it to work with Pat Morita?
That's a great question, and one filled with lots of colorful answers. We absolutely loved Pat Morita. And we loved working with him. He was a very unique actor.
We actually flew to Las Vegas when we were considering casting him and sat down and had dinner with him, and we brought him as a little gift
an official snake wrangling tool, kind of the ones that they use in reality, and then we made the gigantic versions of them for the movie. So, lots of people had told us that Pat, was kind of a wild cat and liked to party and, liked to drink. And so we went out there to kind of, hang out with him a little bit and see, because there was also some concern, would he be able to physically handle the role? And he was, when you read the original script, there was absolutely no way that you would imagine that we would look to cast somebody like Pat Morita in that role. But
you imagine the hard-weathered, Scott Glenn type, or Sam Shepard, Gradley, or
Sam Neill, or these kinds of guys. Sam Elliott, right?
Sam Elliott,
but we like the idea of going in a completely different direction, and always when we're casting, instead of pigeonholing what we think a role should be, we always remain as open as possible, because we just want to be open to see what an actor will do.
Now, on the set with Pat was an interesting process. He was one of the first actors we worked with that had his own unique process, where he really, it's not so much that he didn't memorize the lines, because he did, but he would never read, or he would never recite the lines or act the lines as scripted exactly. He would get the gist of everything he was supposed to do and say, and in the moment, he would really create everything in the moment. So, in other words, every take you do with him is going to be different. And we realized this throughout, into the process, that the best way to get the best performance out of Pat was to let him ramp up and warm into it. And, you had to literally burn some film with Pat Morita. You had to do enough takes to where you felt, number one, you were going to be covered in the editing room, but to allow him to sort of feel his stride. And
because it was like he was trying to be so in the moment that he was actually pulling the words together to form the sentences. And if you go back and you watch his scenes in King Cobra, now knowing what we're saying, you'll see that. And you'll see that he's so in the moment, and everything is coming to him, in a very unique way.
The flip side of that would be he'd finish a take, and we'd sort of have to look at ourselves or our script supervisor and try to imagine, did he get the point across, or did he say something that actually just made sense because he changed it this way and that way? Does that accomplish the goals that we need for the story, even though it was so good and so believable? Every now and then there was certainly did that make sense?
and it was. Here's one other funny story about him. Right before we started shooting, I remember getting a call at 3 o'clock in the morning from a bar, and from him, feeling insecure about whether or not he was going to be able to, pull this role off. And it was
interesting. Want to talk about it late at night.
He was one of those guys that you would never imagine that here's an Academy Award nominated actor, and that he was still so, I wouldn't say insecure. It was just, he was concerned that he wanted to give you the best performance. And it was actually really an honor, because there's been an autobiography that was created, and we were actually interviewed for the biography, and have kept a relationship with his widow, and a very, very, very special man. And when you spend time with him on the set too, to hear how he came to this country, was put in a Japanese internment camp, how he was sick often as a little kid, and how he overcame that, and all the different things. And I think comedy for him was the Band-Aid to hide the wounds that he had suffered through his entire life. And, we truly count our blessings that we got an opportunity to work with him, because certainly when we were growing up, he was Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid, and, that's how we first, grew to love him, and then to get an opportunity to work with him was a real pleasure.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I've been wondering about that since I knew I was going to have you guys on the shows. God, you guys actually got to work with him before, unfortunately, he passed on. So, a lot of people miss him. So, but you guys got to work with him. You guys got him in your movie, and that's just a really cool accomplishment, I think, too, is to be able to work with somebody like that. So. Well,
thanks a lot. And we actually got a double whammy in King Cobra. This is why it's kind of fun to go. And here's another kind of behind the scenes, interesting story that most people don't know. is we also got a chance to work with Hoyt Axton, who played the mayor in that movie, who's also passed on. And the funny story about that is that, we had also always wanted to work with Hoyt Axton. And he came to the set, and he was in a wheelchair.
Which they hadn't, his agent or manager hadn't told us about at all before we cast him. We were fans of his work in Gremlins as well as his whole music career. And he also wrote a song for the film, specifically for King Cobra. Another very special man. But it was interesting to show up in a wheelchair, and then they were concerned whether or not we were okay with that, or was that going to work, or would they didn't want to tell us, maybe we wouldn't cast him, and we're also great fans of Lionel Barrymore and Mr.
It's a Wonderful
Life. It's a Wonderful Life, and Mr. Potter there, and we thought it was great for the mayor to be in a wheelchair. Let's just work it into the story and work it with them. And
they were totally paranoid about it, and that's why they didn't tell us about it. But when he came to the set, it was sort of like this call that came from base camp that said, "Did you guys know that he can't walk?" And we're like, "No, no one told us that." And they're like, "Well, he's in a wheelchair." And David and I just turned to each other and said, "Okay, well then the mayor in King Cobra is in a wheelchair. That's okay. We could work with that." And
he had to appear on stage during the beer fest, and but it worked out fine. It added an interesting aspect to his character. He had a stroke before that, which also affected his speech a little bit. So we had to take a little extra time with him as well. But
I guess that's what makes King Cobra kind of a really special film for us, because you have those two guys in it, and then you have Eric Estrada, who basically his manager called us and said Eric would like to come down and read for the role of that very swishy gay guy in the movie, and we said, Eric Estrada wants to play that kind of part. It
came out of the blue. Yeah, we didn't solicit him at all, and weren't sure even at the time if it was good for the movie for him to be in this role. So what they said was let Eric come to your office in character to convince you
that he could actually pull off this kind of role.
Because we said to them, look, we don't want to have someone like making a mockery of the role or doing it in a way that's,
Because we really just wanted a very, effeminate, truthful portrayal of this publicity guy. And
so at the time we had a large one-room office where we had, do we have two desks or one large desk? I can't even remember that we used to work out of in Culver City. And he showed up one day, came into the office in character.
And totally pulled it off, and we were like, oh my.
Flirted with us both, and
we were like, oh my God, you could pull this off. And we were like, you really want to play this part? And he goes, yeah, I thought the script was great, and I really would like to do a character that's just out of my box. And so that's how that happened.
Nice. Yeah, and wow, that's really weird that they would call up and say, hey, he wants to do this, when you guys weren't even thinking, oh my God, this wouldn't be the person I'd first ask,
Yeah.
This is just somebody that
he's a great guy too. It's like, we've gotten very lucky to, a set becomes like a family. And the family dynamic can either positively or negatively affect the outcome of the film. And we've been very lucky to have just great people working with us, and it just makes the experience worthwhile.
Exactly. Okay, well, I guess we gotta because we don't have a lot of time, and you guys have an extensive career, so we gotta kind of move on to. I want to talk a little bit about Pinata Survival Island. Another. Cult classic, I would say. Now, how did you guys decide that you wanted to do a movie about a killer piñata? How did that kind of come to happen?
It's funny because, again, we were brainstorming, sort of ironic twists. What if, turning things on its head, and we sort of came up with the idea, well, you hit a piñata, you crack it open, what if it was cracking you open kind of thing? And, it's funny because, the struggle with piñata was it's such an out there, concept, and we didn't want to make a goofy, tongue-in-cheek type movie. We actually sort of approached it seriously, so we did a lot of research and, realized that piñatas were made out of ceramic clay, and they originated. Was it in Italy?
Italy first, and then they became, popular in the pre-Columbian period. So when you go back and you look at that piñata, and if you went and looked at and did any kind of research on piñatas, you would see that we based the look of that piñata solely on pre-Columbian art.
So, it's certainly, as we tell you all, the history of that, you can see the difference between, or the challenge with the perception of people expecting a, paper mache or, fuzzy, cute little piñata that comes alive, which is more of a, not so much a spoof kind of concept, but certainly, could be something you'd just make fun of. So it was a bit of a challenge there because we really had kind of a serious, scary thriller movie in mind, and so either you go with that or you don't. And I think for the people who did, it certainly, it was a kind of a creepy movie. A lot was happening during the process of that movie. It was a good young cast that we got to work with there too, with Nicholas Brennan from Buffy and Jamie Presley and Nate Richard from Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and that idea of it's almost like piñata has a 10 Little Indians kind of concept of, okay, put 12 college kids on an island with something that's just completely unbelievable that actually could come to life, but hopefully enough in the folklore. Like one of our favorite parts of that movie is the opening title sequence, because we really built that village and bulldozed an area in the middle of the mountains to build that whole thing, and really stuck to historical references for how the crypts were and how people were buried back then, and all the clay and the idea of manufacturing this piñata out of clay and the whole thing. So we tried to steep it in history. We're big research guys, and we actually like history a lot, and so that's the genesis of where that all came from.
Awesome. Now, was it a pretty good success, or was it a moderate success? How did it do in the kind of in the market?
Well, that's a really good question, and also it seems like every story is an interesting story to us. Hopefully, an interesting story to everyone's listening. We actually had a 2,000 screen commitment for that movie to go out with a new company that was formed by this guy, Mitch Goldman, who used to be the head of distribution for New Line Cinema during the days of the Freddy movies. He's the guy who, saw through Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And he had kind of formed his own company, and it was an opportunity. It was an alternative to the studio system where, they would put up the money to release the picture. There was very transparent accounting, and it was all set, ready to go. We were one of the pictures in the first 5 of the slate to go out. And then 9/11 came, and a lot of the money that they had raised was coming through reinsurance, and people had to focus on their core business, and the movie never went out theatrically.
It was a big company, big financing set up with that company, over $100 million fund, and big players involved from laboratories and the backing of it. And then, as Scott said, when it went down, every film that was set to release had to look elsewhere. In fact, they even had a premiere for their first film that was coming out. It was a movie called Slapper, She's French. Was that with Amanda Peet?
No, it was with the girl from Cowboy Ugly.
Coyote Ugly?
Yeah,
Coyote Ugly.
Coyote Ugly, yeah.
Piper
Paraboo.
Right, exactly. And
we went to the premiere of it because we were all one big happy family of filmmakers who were getting their films released through that program.
And then it fell apart after 9/11, and so we had to look to different companies for distribution. It wound up having a limited theatrical release in like midnight screenings type, and it did okay for that. It was more just like moving it around, for the midnight screenings, and then it did well on video at the time, and
it kind of leads you to the realization, and especially from where we were back then to where we are now. Often the public's perception of what is a hit and why a hit becomes a hit really has nothing to do with the movie itself. Of course, a good movie, if it has the right marketing program behind it and enough of a spend, a good movie will find its way. However, in today's world, it's sort of like the honest truth is that movies are bought. You buy an opening weekend depending on how much money you spend to release it. And, there are certain movies that are released that, the public goes, wow, that really wasn't very good, but yet it becomes a box office success. And then there are other movies that you go, wow, that was a really good movie. Why didn't that take off? Which is a basic equal sign is, well, there wasn't enough money spent on it to break through the clutter.
Yeah, to market it and release it. Pinata, at the time, it was a very good deal that was done with the AMC, and the movie seems to run like every year on AMC, part of their Monster channel, Monster Fest, and so it was a good experience.
All right, awesome. All right, well, I guess it moves on to Dorm Days, which originally, I guess, titled College Sex Comedy. I've heard from Patrick and Worm kind of how that came about is Patrick had met, I don't know, both of you guys or something at the video store? Or
Yeah. It was actually Scott. I was in the video store, and he recognized me, I think, from the behind the scenes of King Cobra. And he said, he introduced himself. He was working behind the counter, and he said, look, me and my writing partner, Worm Miller, just graduated from college, and we have a bunch of scripts. So would you be interested? And always being open to trying to find new talent, I said, of course, yeah, here's the cards, send over the scripts. And
they sent the scripts, and then I actually read it first, the College Sex Comedy. You're right, that was the working title of it. Scott was away, I believe, on a vacation or something, and then I read the script, and there was something about it that I really liked. It was, I wanted Scott to read it, see if he felt the same. What was cool about it was like definitely in the American Pie, young college type genre, but it was different. It was more like a Shakespearean or Moliere type farce, which we felt, we hadn't quite seen before, with 20-year-olds, and it all taking place, basically in a large dormitory.
See, and there's one key word or playwright that David just mentioned that, comes from our classical education of knowing who Moliere is and understanding classic farce. And when I read the script, and then I agreed with exactly David's feelings about it, and I said, my God, this is really interesting because we haven't quite, it's almost like What's Up Doc, that movie, but with 20-year-olds set in a dormitory, because the tone was real. It obviously was a real bunch of college kids in a dormitory, but the tone was heightened enough to make it really feel like what I felt was like Tartuffe or Misanthrope or, these kinds of classic plays.
And Worm and Pat also were fans of like Preston Sturges and, a lot of that kind of farcical style.
We sent it around to our casting director and a couple of other colleagues, and we said, God, this is really interesting. We got some more opinions on it, and everyone said, yeah, this is interesting.
If you could pull it off, because it's kind of unique, very, very dialogue intense, and it was definitely a challenge. It was nice to change from comedy, into comedy, and now our challenge, instead of getting people to jump out of their seat or
figuring out how we were killing people every day, we were now focused on how we were going to make them laugh, which, on reflection, looking at the genres, we would say that comedy is probably the hardest genre to pull off, because at the end of the day, either people are laughing or they're not, and, it's pretty universal. If you can make someone laugh, pretty much everybody laughs. So we really have enjoyed the journey of the comedy, and it led us to, I think, doing some good work with Dorm Days and Dorm Days 2, and then kind of trying to go, okay, how could we just make a big budget comedy that
was maybe something that you haven't quite seen before, and picking
us being fans of like a movie like Young Frankenstein, we said, well, why don't we try to do a modern revisioning of like that kind of movie where the trend was epic movie, date movie, these kinds of movies. A lot of the comedies for this audience were about spoofing other movies, even back to the Scary Movie franchise, and we said, what if we could pull off spoofing and making fun of an entire genre or two or three genres put together, as in the monster hunting genre, the vampire genre.
So kind of like what Zombieland delivered, where again it's its own story, beginning, middle, and end, but it's certainly having fun with the genre. That's really what we set out to do with Transylvania.
And the trend with all the hostels and the saws of ultra gore, we said, what if we could take ultra gore, because there are some scenes in Transylvania that will shock people, and they will, and we've seen it through all the testing, that people have a very visceral response to what they're seeing. And what we tried to accomplish, which it seems that we did through the testing and watching how people responded, is they're first shocked and appalled, but then they laugh about it. So we were trying to spoof, those kinds of gory things that we've just been, there's been a lot of it in the marketplace in the last 10 years.
And again, like Scott said, not spoofing scenes or individual movies, but telling our own story about a bunch of college kids who can't get into really any other study abroad program, and they find themselves in the heart of Romania, in Transylvania, at an 800-year-old castle at a university called Razvan University, with a backstory of vampires, hunchbacks, monsters, little people, all kinds of freaks and ghouls, and what ensues, kind of like taking the college genre and mixing it with the monster fighting genre, as Scott said.
American, college kids versus vampires. American Pie meets Twilight. That was kind of the goal, and then what if we actually went into Transylvania?
Yeah,
we wound up going 8 hours north of Bucharest and filming in this 800-year-old castle.
Because what's cool, we didn't want to build some kind of bullshit sets here and try to make it feel like we're somewhere else. We really wanted to go right where the story was set,
and to take 12 American actors and essentially 12 key of our technical team, and then work with
over 100 Romanians in the dead of winter in Romania, in the heart of Transylvania, at this real kick-ass castle. It was just an incredible experience.
And it really led to lots of hijinks and things that, based and jumped off of the script and then found its way into the movie, with a very, very talented ensemble of young actors, some who we had worked with before, and some
great characters, great action. We did a lot of horse and fighting and sword fighting and chasing, and there's a lot in Transylvania. It really is an action comedy, a vampire action comedy, and we're very excited about it. It opens December 4th. We've been getting great response to the film, and really looking forward to its opening.
Now, the Dorm Days series as is, 3 different. Well, I guess Transylvania, even though it's got the same characters from Dorm Days, it's not really it's not trying to be Dorm Days 3 Transylvania. It's just
Yeah, that's a very good point. So let us clarify for you.
Yeah, because we had gotten a lot of letters, emails, and stuff from a lot of people who really liked a few of the characters from the Dorm Days franchise. So we decided to spin them off into this adventure, and keep their character names. It's actually a funny story, because one of the actors we've worked with a number of times, Patrick Cavanaugh, we realized the other day, it's almost like a running joke, because he was also in our movie Gamebox 1.0. Very talented actor. You could see him a lot on Mad Men now. He's a series regular, or many episodes of Mad Men. And every movie we've worked with him, his character is always named Pete. So we kept him. Yeah. So we spun off a few of the characters, but it's it's its own movie. It has nothing to do with Dorm Days per se. Just it has a few of the characters into a bigger budget, as we said, action adventure, and like the Jimmy DeBello character, James DeBello, who we also enjoy working with. His character was so bizarre and unique in the Dorm Days franchise, so we kind of progressed him to a next level as well.
Yeah, so we said, let's take a bunch of these characters that we like and we know that the fan base likes. Let's take them and put them with a whole bunch of new characters and create a whole new vampire action comedy adventure for them.
And we worked with an actress, Musetta Vander, actually a South African actress who's been in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? She was Will Ferrell's wife in Kicking and Screaming. Very beautiful, very talented, and we really wanted for the role of the vampire huntress someone who could pull off that kick-ass, sexy, hot action almost like underworld type character, and she did a phenomenal job. And in fact, you can see there's a special, as we get closer to the release date, David Steinberg, who's the little person who plays Dean Floka. He's also in Epic Movie. They're doing a special running or showing of Epic Movie just before the opening of Transylvania on the FX channel, and David did a little hosting of it, in honor of both the Epic Movie running as well as Transylvania. It's a really talented cast. We're very, very pleased with. It was fun to all be over there again, deep in the heart of Transylvania, with 15, 20, 20-year-olds. Very cool experience.
Awesome. And I guess filming in Transylvania is probably a lot different than filming in LA. But how was the crew to work with?
Fantastic. It was fantastic. We had an absolutely amazing experience. We worked with a company that, in a way, is similar to ours, a young company called Silver Bullet. And the guy who owns the company is also the cinematographer. He's probably one of the top number 1 or 2 cinematographers in all of Eastern Europe, a guy by the name of Viorel Sergovici. And he really, his crew and his team of people were amazing. Long hours, long days, extreme cold, and some really great, talented people. So very, very exciting production. It'll always be, one of the most unique, interesting productions we've ever done. It was our first experience going overseas, and lots of people told us, all the horror stories of what happens, and we had none of them. We really did. It was we had a very
freezing cold, though. You'll see when you see the movie. It was so cold in that castle,
and you see the smoke coming out of all the actors' mouths because
they had 12 layers of clothes on, and which is a challenge since a lot of there are a lot of scenes with the actresses naked, and it was freezing cold.
Now, I guess there's probably a lot of nudity in the film. Do you feel like that was needed for the film, just to make sales, or do you think that nudity, it wouldn't have been needed if you had taken it out?
That's a really good question, and the quite candid answer is that the nudity in the film comes out of the story. There's no scene where you'll get a sense that somebody goes, oh, let's just pull down my top, to show some breasts. It comes organically out of the story, and when you see the film, you'll understand why.
There's scenes of ritualistic orgies, and that again tie to the story
and the vampire lore
and the sorceress, and it's very sexy. There's a lot of cool stuff in the film.
But we don't feel like even when you go back and you look at some movies which is one of our favorites, like a movie like Animal House. And, they cut up to the window and boom, there you go. It's a bunch of girls, without their tops on. It works and it's classic, but it's kind of obvious that it's like, oh, we need to, show breasts now. Or if you even go back and you look at Stripes, which is, again, another one of our favorite movies, when John Larroquette is looking through his binoculars and boom, there we go. We get some breasts in there right away. Did you have to have that in the film? Yeah, I guess you did, but maybe it just strikes you as a little like, okay, here's an opportunity to show some breasts.
A little gratuitous, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it did just to kind of describe that character a little bit more. So sometimes, sometimes it can be good, but sometimes it just does feel kind of out of place. Like they put it in there just for the sake of putting it in there. But from the Dorm Days series so far, I don't think that anybody would feel that way about the nudity. I think the nudity usually comes out from the story, like you guys said. So
yeah, that's how we try to do it, and certainly there are some absolutely stunning Romanian girls who play the vampire brides in Transylvania that we auditioned probably 1,000 girls to find these girls because, and you know what? They're not necessarily L.A., Americana fake boob girls. They're more naturalistic Romanian reality beauties in a way.
But there's all kinds of fun scenes with all the, not just the vampire brides, but the main characters as well. And, there's a lot of situations you have, characters who are trying to work on their sex life, the whole Codex Eroticon, which you'll see there's a little bit of that going on the internet about the Codex Eroticon, and there's a clip that was playing, which becomes a very prominent piece of some of the character arcs.
About a book like the Kama Sutra that's just a little bit more intense, and what if you follow the positions and the way they tell you to have sex, it causes certain things to happen.
And it's just, again, with the mistaken identity or the mix-ups when something actually happens to one of the characters who, there's a backstory of the vampires and a sorceress and her soul that gets trapped in a music. But there's all kinds of stuff in Transylvania that, you don't necessarily see in the trailers or even in the clips, because there's so much going on. And it all plays a part and ties in. Sex is wrapped around a lot of different things in the storyline.
Awesome. Well, now, it's getting up to be almost that time. It's almost time to wrap it up. So I'm just wondering what's up for you guys next. Like, what do you guys, I know you guys are, Transylvania is coming out December 4th. Now, is that a wide release? Is that every theater?
Yeah,
it's a wide release, a theater near you.
Approximately 1,500 screens across the country.
Wow.
Television commercials started running a couple of days ago, like on South Park and MTV, and then very soon, they're going to be all over the place. The TV spot,
Spike and Comedy Central and USA and FX and Network, and we have great support. There's a lot of unique things that MTV is doing with the film, as well as Comedy Central, some unique clips and lessons learned on Comedy Central and MTV, so watch for that stuff, as well as FX and USA, too. So we've had great support from...
And it's one of these things, too, that, it was shown with Twilight, the movie Twilight, that the public decides whether or not there's something that they really like. It doesn't necessarily these days take a major studio like a Paramount or a Warner Brothers to release a movie theatrically that can become successful. And what we did is we went out and we raised, P&A money, large P&A money, and we hired a team of people run by this guy, Larry Gleason, who was the head of MGM during the Legally Blonde years and the barbershop movies. He's the guy who bought Leaving Las Vegas. He worked at Paramount. He was also the president of Man Theaters in his career. And he pulled together a studio-level roster of guys, and we formed this company, Full Circle Releasing. And we are releasing this picture on 1,500 screens with a major P&A campaign behind it. And, while we don't have, let's say, the money of Sony, we certainly hope that we have enough money to get the word out and get the awareness up. And we really believe that if you're in the demo that likes this kind of movie, you will love this movie because it is a laugh-out-loud funny movie.
Because, a studio the size of, like, Summit, who released Twilight, and,
Overture, another studio, a smaller studio that's kind of come into being. And, we've worked very hard to, create a campaign that's interesting, out of the box. One of the guys on the campaign is also Gary Faber, who, was the former head of marketing for the Weinstein Company, and he actually designed these buttons that they're wearing in the theaters that are the happy face buttons, the smiley yellow face, and he came up with the idea to put like a vampire fang on it, and those are all over. Yeah, they're really cute. We'll send you a package of stuff, Jonathan, just so you see all the cool stuff.
What's been shown with Paranormal Express, when the audience wants to go something, they do, and Transylvania again, through the whole process here, it's fun, it's unique, it's different, and it's really laugh out loud funny. We found through the whole testing. The other cool thing about it is girls like it as much as guys, which is good, as opposed to like a college comedy is often more just a guy movie. Transylvania has some kick-ass female characters as well, and we're very excited about it. It's been a really huge response to the film in all the previous screenings as well. So we're very excited as it launches.
There's a great website that we're also really proud of that basically, it's at transylvaniathemovie.com, and it basically makes the school as if it's kind of a real study abroad program. And the guys who did it are over at Intralink. They're the guys who, Intralink designed all the Dark Knight campaign. And
we're giving you a lot of the behind-the-scenes nitty-gritty, since I know a lot of your listeners are in the aspiring filmmaker or in that world of independent film. So just giving you a little glimpse behind the scenes as well.
Oh, cool. Well, it's actually about to end, to cut off. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much for calling in. And letting everybody know to go check out the movie on December 4th in a theater near you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. There's a great Facebook page for it too. So if you're on Facebook, go in and hit Facebook, type in Transylmania on Facebook, and it'll bring you to a cool page.
Right. Also Twitter as well, and spread the word.
I certainly have already. So. And I know I'll be taking off work for that day just to go see, the movie and everything. And I'm really excited about it. So, but thank you guys once again, and I'm really happy that this is coming out.
We are too. Thanks for the support, Jonathan. And we love what you're doing with your show. It's a great show, and to
it's
all your
always
listeners.
Great to talk to you because you always ask such good questions, and they're intelligent, and they evoke like cool stories and stuff from our end. So we really appreciate it, and we're always there for you too.
All right. Well, maybe we'll try to set up another show after Transylmania, comes out and everything. Maybe to talk a little bit more. I know we can really delve that deeply into it, but enough, I guess, to kind of get people enticed,
That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much, and I'm going to be having Jennifer on the show, I think, next week, and then I'll be having Worm and Patrick the Monday after Thanksgiving, I believe. So we're having everybody on here, and I'm trying to get Paul back on, and maybe Patrick, if we can get Patrick Kavanaugh on the show as well. So
yeah, you should maybe try to have Patrick and Paul on together because
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking too, because I was thinking they should, the way that I saw them as Pete and Wang should do their own spin-off movie and go to like Jamaica or something.
Yeah, everyone loves their characters. If you haven't seen the Stoner trailer, there was a special Stoner trailer that was just released on
Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes, and they had it on their front page the last couple of days, and there's also a clip of theirs that's now also on the main page of MySpace. If you haven't checked that out in their trailer park section, it's a featured clip of Pete and Wang, and I mean the Stoner characters, they're awesome.
Yeah. But once again, thank you guys so much. And I guess it's already ended. We're still on, but like people can't hear us right now, like live. But they'll be able to hear us in the archive, and we'll definitely I'll definitely try to get more people to come listen to the show and hear about, because it was a very interesting and intelligent show about independent film. So
Cool.
But thank you guys so much, and I know you guys are very busy, so I'll let you guys go. But enjoy it, and I can't wait to see the flick.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jonathan, so much.
Take care.
Okay, have a good night.
All right,
you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, well, that was Scott and David Hillenbrand, who are the directors of Transylmania, which is coming out December 4th. Go check it out. It's going to be amazing. I've seen all the trailers for it. It looks hilarious. Go check it out. Go listen. Go watch it. Go to their Transylmania Facebook page and Twitter page and their website and everything. So, but thank you guys, and thank you guys for listening, and hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, bye-bye.